Today we're going to be doing a quick demo of the Synthetic Data Generator native app from DataMynd. There are many ways of creating artificial data, but we're just going to cover how to create high-quality synthetic data that actually retains many of the same correlations, trends, and potential uses as your real data. High-quality synthetic data has loads of applications, from machine learning, where sensitive datasets can't be used, to decreasing bias in unbalanced datasets. You can minimize the risk of data proliferation when sharing data, and it can be used for high-level dashboarding, among many others. The main steps we'll walk through today are selecting your real data, choosing a model and adjusting your training parameters, training the model on the real data, generating new synthetic data, and previewing and evaluating your generated data before finalizing the project. Now let's get started. Over in Snowflake, once you open the Synthetic Data Generator native app, you'll first see a list of projects. Each one can contain one or multiple tables in a schema that you want to train on and generate similar synthetic data. Let's start a new project and give it a name. Now it's time to select our real data and model type. In this case, I have a table with patient records from a diabetes study of rural Americans. Once you select your table, it's time to select the model type. In this case, we're going to choose Gaussian copula, which is a purely statistical model, but it does a pretty good job at quickly matching distributions of values in each field, so it's good for our demo today. When you need a higher quality output with more accurate correlations and trends, you should choose a neural net-based model like CTGAN, although it takes a little while longer to train. Once you're set on this page, we're going to save our table and model selection and move on to the next step. On this page, we can configure our column options like data types, formats, and whether or not to anonymize the values in a column. Choosing anonymize means that the model won't produce records based on the input data. You might want to do this for any fields that contain personal or sensitive data. In this case, I'm just going to make a couple of quick changes. I see a patient address and a patient name. Those are fields that I want to anonymize so I don't share the actual values from those fields. For patient address, there's a couple of options that we have to fill out. We'll choose address for our category of anonymization, as well as address for the type. For our patient name, let's also choose anonymize. And for our type of anonymization, I'll drop down to person, and we can just choose name. One last thing I'll quickly change here, which is to make the P key in the table the patient number. And I want to make sure that that is being cast as an ID field. Everything else should be okay, so let's go ahead and save and move on to the next step. Now that our data and model are set, it's time to adjust any of the training parameters. Each model gives you a different set of training parameters like training epochs and output languages. The defaults are good for us for now, so let's go ahead and train our model. This can take anywhere from a few seconds to a few hours based on the size of the real data, the selected model, and the model parameters. Once we go ahead and refresh, we see that the training is successful, so let's move on to the next step. Once the model has been trained, all that's left to do is generate our synthetic data. For today, 500 records is good enough, so let's go ahead and hit generate. We can see that we've successfully generated some synthetic data, and you can see the output schema and table right here. Let's go ahead and hit next, because the last step is to check that everything looks just right. This last page allows you to preview and filter your new synthetic data and compare it to the original data. So let's see how close we are. First, I'll enable the histogram view, and we can look at how close the distributions of each field are to the original. I'd say we did a pretty good job here. I also want to go one step further and start to filter my new synthetic data. So let's add a couple of filters, and I know that there's a correlation between a higher BMI and occurrence of type 2 diabetes. So let's add a filter for BMI and maybe one for gender. Let's filter BMI to greater than, let's say, 37. And I'll just throw another filter on here for male patients. And I can see of the 6 or 7 records in here, the majority of them do have diabetes. So again, it looks like we did a pretty good job at creating synthetic data today. And that's it for our demo. Feel free to check out the Synthetic Data Generator native app by DataMynd on the Snowflake Marketplace, or shoot us a note at info@datamind.io. Thanks.